Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak on Arise News. And now for a review of what's making the headlines in the papers this morning, let's bring in Arise analyst Constance Ikoku. Good morning, Constance.
Morning, Charles. Good to see you again today.
Great to see you today too.
And Yolanda, good morning.
Good morning, Constance.
I can't even believe it's 20th February. Can you?
Yes, I was just saying this. The month is just zooming past.
Look, it's compensation for January, which is about 60 days long. So if February shortens that time, I think that's divine compensation.
Okay, I don't know about that, but the days are just flying past and it's unbelievable. Anyway, to look at the papers with us this morning, we have Iyo Akerea. He is a member of the Nigerian Guild of Editors. Hello there and welcome to the program. We'll begin with this day newspaper. FG targets 10 million new jobs as Nigeria leads Africa's digital trade revolution. All this is happening on the back of Nigeria's designation as Africa's digital trade champion. This occurred during the 38th African Union Summit in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Vice President Kashim Shettima says Nigeria's progress in digital commerce, services, and innovation positions it as the continent's digital hub. A lot of good stories coming here, but the major goal I think at that summit that everyone will be interested in is that the AfCFTA digital protocol aims to increase intra-African trade from 18% to 50% by 2030. That will be a game changer, and Africa needs that ego, isn't it?
Yes, I agree completely that that would be a game changer for Africa. And of course, Nigeria is leading the pack in this. Nigeria has a lot of potential in terms of technological advancement and development. When former President Muhammadu Buhari said that Nigerian youths are lazy, you could see the debate that generated. So coming out of Ethiopia, that Nigeria is indeed a champion in digital trade, platforms. It is not in doubt, because if you look even within Nigeria as a country, you'll find that we are now internally dependent on trade transaction platforms, payment systems, which people have developed locally. So it's a good thing coming out, and for the jobs that it will create, I think it holds enormous opportunity for not just for the country, but across countries in Africa. Already, a lot of the countries in Africa are benefiting from it, and it holds a whole lot of future for the African continent.
Okay, let's move on to the Guardian newspaper. AGF, EFCC talk tough, caution governors, LG bosses on treason fraud. This is an apparent reference to the crisis in Osun State over the court removal and alleged reinstatement of local government bosses. We know that after a failed attempt to take over their offices Monday, the All Progressives Congress, local government chairmen have regrouped and have taken over some council secretariats. What's happening in Osun is clearly unsettling, and it seems to be a fight to finish between the APC and the PDP.
Well, it is so unfortunate that that is happening in Osun. Don't forget, Osun State is very pivotal to democratic development in the Southwest, and of course Nigeria. Now, how did this happen? Former governor of the state, Oyetola, was leaving office after he had lost election, lost the governorship election to the PDP candidate, Governor Adeleke. And just 2 months before he left, he then hurriedly organized the local government, whether there was even an election, and then the chairman came in. Meanwhile, that action itself, from what we have seen in the report, is a contravention of the INEC regulation. You must give 3 months notice for local government elections to hold. So those chairmen were put in place 2 months before he left office. And that is what we are seeing. It is reverberating in terms of the violence, the killings, the bloodletting that is taking place in that state. Unfortunately, there's allegations that you know, it is also part of the larger attempt by the ruling party, the APC, to take over states that are controlled by the opposition People's Democratic Party. Well, it is difficult to rule that out given what is happening, and also given statements coming out of the APC National Chairman Ganduje that the APC will capture, you know, the remaining states that they are not controlling. The president himself, unfortunately, also said that people can grab it and run with it. So a lot of interpretation is coming into all of what is happening in Osun State. But I must say that is a dent in Nigeria's democracy that is having a smooth ride since 1999. I
mean, I think, you know, there's also the legal angle. Charles, if you can come in here. The Attorney General of the Federation, Lateef Fagbemi, has said it amounts to treason to remove elected local government bosses, although this is more controversial what is going on in Osun State. But, you know, Edo State attempted it too.
Well, Osun's problem is not exactly unique. I think it's what runs throughout the entire federation, the relationship between the states and the local governments. And as far as I'm concerned, as long as there are constitutional loopholes that allow the state governments to exercise some form of control over the local governments, I mean, the issue of local government autonomy remains a mirage. It is just on paper. Local governments are supposed to be autonomous from the state governments as much as the state governments are also autonomous from the federal government. But unfortunately, all over the country, the governors are the chief executives de facto over the local governments, and they decide who, whether through elections, whether through appointments, whether through selection, call it what you may. They always are the ones who ensure that the people they decide or determine are the chief executives of local governments in order that they may have access to local government funds with active assistance from the state houses of assembly. So local government autonomy has to be properly constitutionally defined and plug the loophole so that we know who is in charge of local governments.
All right. The PDP now is alleging that there are attempts to assassinate the governor, Ademola Adeleke. It's an evolving story, so we will be bringing you more of that as the days go by. Let's look at another paper, Daily Independent. Senate summons security chiefs over alleged Boko Haram funding. Those summoned include the National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu, Director General of National Intelligence Agency, Defense Intelligence Agency, and Department of State Services. We know that this followed the adoption of the resolution of a motion of urgent national importance by Senator Ali Ndume, and the debate is all about finding out the veracity of the claims of USAID funding Boko Haram. Ndume also suggested an ad hoc committee to be set up to look into the matter. You know, another committee. We always have committees in these countries whose findings may be swept under the carpet. Is just a possibility. But there's a lot that's been going on. I think the authorities know a lot that is going on, you know, with the Boko Haram crisis. We've been fighting this for more than 14 years.
Well, I must say I'm a bit disappointed this morning that the Senate, well, I commend Ndume first and foremost that he raised this yesterday at the floor of the Senate. But again, he has to, because he's from Borno State and he's directly affected by what is happening there. He's been very ardent, very frontal, and quite loud, you know, quite strong on this issue. Now, how did we get to this? It took an American congressman, Scott Perry, representing Pennsylvania, to raise the issue on the floor of the American Congress, and clearly revealed that USAID is a conduit for funding destabilization agenda and plots across Africa, Afghanistan, and all of the countries that USAID is very active. Now, the Senate is summoning the service chiefs. The question I ask is, are we saying as a country that the heads of the DSS, the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the police, all of them, for more than 15 years that the country has been battling Boko Haram, that we do not know where the funding is coming from and who are actually responsible? So this is where most Nigerians will be holding the government accountable this morning, because even in UAE, when the former president was the father Buhari, gave Nigeria about 12 names of Boko Haram financiers and sponsors that were held up in UAE. They were arrested, and their names were, I think they were even deported, and their names were given to Nigeria. Nothing came out of it. So I feel that there is some kind of official complicity within the Nigerian state that knows a lot and they just failed to do something about it. And
Charles,
now it is a disgrace.
Yeah, Charles, you seem to be nodding. You wanted to say something here?
Absolutely. It's like connecting the dots. The CDS, the Chief of Defense Staff, alleging that Boko Haram is getting sponsorship from abroad. And then Scott Perry, the U.S. congressman, pointing a finger at USAID, so it now connects the dots in some way. Well, I was talking about this with Yolanda, and I said USAID did not deliberately set out to fund Boko Haram or whatever terrorist organizations, but it's a big organization and it has individuals working for it that have their own private agenda apart from the officially assigned assignments. So if they decide on their own to siphon some of the funds and channel it into funding terrorism, then of course there is something to look into. And then the issue that Mr. Akerega also pointed out, that the UAE gave Nigeria a list of those funding Boko Haram in the country, and then what came out of it?
Okay.
So I mean, I guess there's a bigger conspiracy somewhere, bigger than, you know, the nation has been allowed access to.
Well, apart from that, also we also remember that there have been allegations of links to politicians in you know, the Boko Haram crisis.
And that's the point.
Even Senator Ali Ndume, at some point, he was accused by the Jonathan government of having links to Boko Haram. He denied it. He also went on trial. Eventually, for a couple of years, he was discharged and acquitted because the judge said there wasn't sufficient evidence to nail him of terrorism charges. But a lot of shady deals going on there in Borno State. Anyway, we have to move on to the next story. A Daily Trust this morning, FG to bar 60,000 liter fuel tankers from roads by March 1, so it's really happening. We also have at the top right of that page, a visa denial. Nigeria won't tolerate disrespect from any country, according to CDS. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, says Nigeria deserves respect on a global stage. We remember that there were, some army officials were denied visas to Canada. And the reaction by the National Security Advisor was to say, go to hell. The CDS says, Nigeria is a great nation, and I quote, and we deserve to be treated with respect. We received an official invitation, followed due process, and complied with all requirements. Igor, you can jump in here briefly. I mean, much has been said about this incident. Yes, Nigeria indeed is a great nation, deserves respect, but we also have to work for it. There's so many things that public officials do in this country that attract disrespect for the country.
Yes, I agree that Nigeria deserves respect, but who will respect you when even the country itself would not respect our citizens? People are being killed left, right, and center. We do not obey the rule of law. We virtually stand on the head of democratic practices. We run a constitutional democracy. We do not obey our own laws. And so it is difficult, to have other countries respecting you when you do not place some kind of premium on your own country and your citizens. That is one. The second issue I want to raise, where a big man is involved here, the CDS is involved. That is why it has become a big issue for debate and conversation. And we are now arguing that there's a need to respect Nigerians. When ordinary common Nigerians are denied visa under questionable circumstances, very very elementary reasons for such denials. Nobody gets to hear of it, but it is good that this has happened to an influential person, Christopher Musa, the Chief of Defense Staff, and we have now woken up, to take on this issue. It is good.
At the same time,
yeah,
at the same time, Oh, sorry. At the same time, I don't think there is enough information being given around why these visas were denied. We had this talk, I think last week, Friday, when we were discussing, you know, the standards and the rules that all these diplomatic agencies have concerning visas and granting them to citizens. And in this case, this high-level group, this delegation of, I believe, 70 were trying to go to Canada. And so there's not enough information on why, on what grounds that they were denied. And I'm in the middle on this one, you know. Yes, it's a really good step for Nigerians to say, look, we demand our respect, but as well, we need more information. Why were these visas
denied? Well, you know, these are not random.
denied?
These are army officials. They said they
Very
followed
true.
due process. So
Very
anyway,
true.
we have to rest that story because we don't have time.
We did establish the fact that the Canadian government has the right to deny anyone entry into their country.
All right.
So I think that settles it.
Okay, Citizen newspaper, budget, what's going on? The ruling African National Congress is being pummeled for postponing the budget to March 12, following a disagreement between it and the Democratic Alliance on a 2% increase in VAT. The DA believes there should be no tax increase, and many believe this will affect poor people. I mean, Yolanda, this postponement is being seen as a national embarrassment for South Africans. It's reported to be the first in the history of the country, and it's an indication of how poorly the government of national unity is going, or it could also be seen as a counterbalance.
It begs the question, didn't you know the budget was coming? It's not something that just springs up on you. It's something that is timed well ahead. So for this to happen, absolutely, this is a national embarrassment, I believe, for South Africa, and doesn't fall too far from the tree for us, Nigeria, as well. We had a similar incident. I see your smirk there, Constance. Yes, but
take a dig at us, huh? We'll come for Zimbabwe soon. Don't worry. All right, let's look at the Daily Mirror finally. It's an outright war of words between the U.S. and the Europeans across the Atlantic. To Ukraine with love, Starmer calls Zelensky to pledge UK support after deranged Trump calls him dictator. I mean, in the ensuing division between UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is standing for Ukraine. Yolanda, I mean, let's also look at it. I think most papers led with this same headline. We don't have time to look through them, but what are your thoughts quickly?
Well, very quickly before we end, I'd like to list out the different names that Trump has called Zelensky. He's called him a clown. He said he's a modestly successful comedian. He said he could have come to Saudi without an invitation. He didn't need it. And Zelensky wanted to keep the gravy train going. You know, the insults are too many. And just with this, sorry, I've been told that we need to end this, but I mean, oh, Ukraine.
Let me just have the last word on this.
Sure, go on.
Trump is giving a dog a bad name in order to hang it. He already has his agenda. He's supporting Russia, and he just wants to make Zelensky look like the bad guy.
Well,
yes, I agree. I agree completely. This is a very bad time for Ukraine. Zelensky is in some kind of trouble. The narrative is that there have not been elections for some time, and so Zelensky has exceeded his time. But again, I agree that it's just giving a dog a bad name to hang it. It's a difficult time for Ukrainians because America is the biggest supporter of that country. And kudos to the UK. The UK has always been a big supporter of Ukraine in this war with Russia. Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Igor Akeraga, a member of the Guild of Editors, for joining us for the paper review this morning.
And thank you so much, Dr. Constance, for leading the newspaper review this morning. That's all we have time for here on Daybreak. I'm Charles Eruka. It's goodbye from me.
And I'm Yolanda Robert. Please do keep it here on Arise News.